Before this story begins, pause for just a moment. Subscribe to the channel. Because the stories shared here aren't just stories. They are fragments of real lives, moments when everything feels stable, and then suddenly isn't. They are about the things we lose without warning, the words we never hear, and the truths that arrive too late. If you've ever been abandoned without an explanation, if you've ever carried silence heavier than anger, then this story was meant to find you. Now let me tell you about Ethan. Ethan had been moving around the house since early evening, fixing things that didn't really need fixing. A luz cabinet range. A flickering hallway light. A drawer that stuck halfway no matter how gently you pulled it. None of it was urgent. None of it actually mattered. But keeping his hands busy was the only way to keep his mind quiet. Because when Ethan stopped moving, when the noise faded and the house settled into stillness, his thoughts always drifted back to the same place. The same empty space. The same unanswered questions. The same name he had trained himself not to say out loud anymore. Emily. The kitchen glowed softly under a single yellow bulb, the kind of light that tried to make everything feel warmer than it truly was. Shadows clung to the corners of the room, stretching long across the walls as night pressed against the windows. The silence wasn't complete. It was broken by the gentle clink of porcelain and the steady rush of water from the sink. His mother, Linda, stood there washing dishes one by one. She moved slowly, carefully, like someone who was already exhausted but refused to admit it. Ethan noticed everything. The slight curve of her shoulders, the way she paused between plates, the controlled rhythm of her breathing. She wasn't rushing, but she wasn't relaxed either. Whenever she glanced at him, she offered a soft smile. But her eyes told a different story. They carried worry she never voiced. Ethan tightened the final screw on the cabinet and stepped back, testing it once more. Solid. Stable. Something that stayed where it was supposed to stay. He wiped his hands on an old rag and leaned against the counter, releasing a slow breath through his nose. It had been over a year since Emily left. More than 12 months since his life had split cleanly into two versions. The life before, and the one that followed. And yet some days, it still felt like it had happened yesterday. She hadn't yelled. She hadn't accused him of anything. She hadn't cried. She had simply said she needed to go. No argument. No explicación. No dramatic exit. Just gone. The quiet in the kitchen pressed against Ethan's chest. It wasn't uncomfortable, it was heavy. The kind of silence that carries grief in its bones. The kind that settles in and refuses to leave. And standing there, watching his mother carry on as if everything were normal, Ethan felt something tighten in his throat. She had been holding this house together. Not just the walls and the bills, but the emotions. Her own worries. His heartbreak. The absence of laughter that used to echo through these rooms. She carried it all without complaint, without asking him to be okay before he was ready. Before he even realized what he was doing, Ethan stepped forward and wrapped his arms gently around her shoulders from behind. It wasn't desperation. It wasn't sadness. It was gratitude. For the meals she still cooked. For the questions she never forced. For holding everything together while he quietly unraveled. Linda stiffened for just a moment, startled by the sudden warmth. Then slowly she leaned back into him. Her hands remained beneath the running water. Fingers trembling ever so slightly. Ethan smiled faintly. Then she exhaled. Not a sigh. Not relief. A fragile, unsteady breath. The kind that carried months of weight with it. Ethan pulled back just enough to see her face. And that's when he knew. Something was wrong. Her expression wasn't sad. It was conflicted. Tender. Afraid. Burdened. Like someone standing at the edge of a truth they had avoided for far too long. Ethan, she whispered. Her voice shook in a way he had never heard before. There's something you need to know. His heart jumped, not with fear but confusion. That sharp, unsettling sensation that comes just before life shifts direction. What do you mean? He asked carefully, even though the floor beneath him suddenly felt unsteady. Linda turned off the faucet. The sound echoed in the kitchen, leaving an even deeper silence behind. She dried her hands slowly, deliberately, as if delaying the moment might somehow soften it. Not here, she said quietly. Come sit with me. In that moment, Ethan understood this wasn't casual. This wasn't a memory or a small confession. This was something tied directly to the ache he carried every day. They moved toward the small dining table, the air between them charged, as though every quiet moment of the past year had been leading to this exact point. Ethan sat down, his body still but his thoughts racing. He didn't know what he was bracing for. Only that whatever she was about to say would change something forever. Linda sat across from him, hands folded tightly, as if she were afraid they might betray her if she let them move freely. 2 teacups sat untouched between them, their steam already fading into nothing. The warmth should have been comforting. It wasn't. She stared at the table at first, tracing invisible lines in the worn wood with her gaze. Gathering courage she had postponed for far too long. Ethan waited. He didn't interrupt. But inside everything tightened. His chest. His throat. His patience. The name hovered between them like a ghost. Emily. Finally, Linda lifted her eyes. They weren't filled with dramatic tears, just quiet regret. The kind that ages with time. "I've been watching you," she said gently. "I've seen how you changed after she left." She spoke of his forced smiles, his routine, the way he avoided conversations that might crack him open, how his expression fell the moment he thought no one was watching. Ethan tried to speak, to say he was fine, that he'd moved on. She shook her head. "No," she said softly. "Not with me." Her hand moved toward a drawer beside her chair. She hesitated, then opened it. The sound of wood sliding felt unbearably loud. From inside, she pulled out an envelope, old, creased, worn at the edges. Something about it made Ethan's chest tighten before his mind could catch up. She placed it between them. "This came a week after Emily left," she whispered. "It was addressed to you. A letter. From Emily." Ethan's hands trembled as he reached for it. All the unanswered questions, all the sleepless nights, everything narrowed to this single piece of paper. He slid a finger under the flap. Then, a knock echoed through the house. Sharp, firm, unexpected. Both of them froze. Another knock followed. And then a voice, soft, uncertain, painfully familiar, drifted through the door. The voice lingered in the air for a second longer than it should have. Soft, uncertain, painfully familiar. "Ethan?" His breath caught instantly. That single word, his name, landed heavier than the knock itself. It wasn't loud. It wasn't demanding. It carried hesitation, like someone unsure whether they were welcome or already too late. Ethan didn't move. The letter trembled in his hand, forgotten now, half open, suspended between a past that never explained itself, and a present that suddenly refused to stay quiet. Linda stood up slowly. Her chair scraped softly against the floor, the sound sharp in the stillness. Her face had drained of color, eyes wide not with fear, but recognition. Another knock followed. Gentler this time. "Please," the voice said again. I need to talk." Ethan's legs felt heavy as he rose from the chair. His heartbeat thundered in his ears, loud enough to drown out everything else. Part of him wanted to stay frozen, to pretend the sound wasn't real, that grief hadn't learned how to knock. But his body moved anyway. Each step toward the front door felt unreal, like walking through a dream you know you can't wake up from. The hallway seemed longer than it ever had before. The walls, once familiar, now felt like witnesses. He stopped inches from the door. On the other side stood the one person he had spent a year trying to understand, forgive, forget, and somehow still love. Linda appeared beside him, her hand hovering near his arm but not touching. She didn't guide him. She didn't stop him. This choice wasn't hers anymore. Ethan reached for the handle. His fingers hesitated. Then he opened the door. Emily stood there. She looked thinner, paler. Her hair was pulled back loosely, as if she hadn't thought much about how she looked before coming. Her eyes, the eyes he knew better than his own reflection, were rimmed red, exhausted, holding back something fragile. For a moment neither of them spoke. Time didn't rush forward. It stretched. "I didn't know if you'd open the door," she said quietly. Ethan stared at her. His mind raced through 1,000 questions, but none of them found their way to his mouth. The only thing he managed was a small, hollow breath. "You left," he finally said. Not angry, not accusing, just honest. Emily nodded. her lips trembling slightly. I know. Silence filled the space between them again, thick and uncomfortable. Linda cleared her throat softly from behind him. Come inside, she said gently. Emily hesitated, then stepped over the threshold. The door closed behind her with a quiet click that felt louder than it should have. The house suddenly felt smaller, like it was holding its breath. Ethan didn't invite her to sit. He didn't offer water. He simply stood there, the letter still clutched in his hand like proof that this moment was real. Emily noticed it immediately. Her eyes dropped to the envelope. You have it, she whispered. Linda's voice broke the silence. We were just about to read it. Emily swallowed hard. I didn't know if you ever would. Ethan looked down at the envelope, then back at her. You wrote me a letter, he said. And then you disappeared. Her shoulders sagged slightly, like the weight of those words had finally caught up to her. I wasn't strong enough to face you, she admitted. If I had seen you, I wouldn't have gone through with it. Gone through with what? Ethan asked. Emily closed her eyes. Leaving, she said. Linda quietly excused herself, moving back toward the kitchen, giving them space without making it obvious. The sound of her footsteps faded, leaving Ethan and Emily alone in the living room. The same room where they had once planned a future that never happened. Ethan gestured toward the couch. Seat. They sat opposite each other, an invisible distance between them that felt wider than the room itself. Ethan opened the letter fully now, his fingers steady despite the storm inside his chest. He began to read. Ethan, if you're reading this, it means I wasn't brave enough to say these words out loud. I'm sorry for that. I know silence can hurt more than truth, and I hate myself for choosing it. His throat tightened. Emily watched his face closely, flinching at every pause, every breath he took between lines. You deserve an explanation, even if it comes too late. The truth is, I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because I was afraid of how much I did. Ethan stopped reading. What does that even mean? He asked, his voice low. Emily leaned forward, her hands twisting together. I felt like I was losing myself, she said. Not because of you, because I didn't know who I was anymore. Loving you felt permanent and I panicked. Ethan looked back down at the letter. I've been carrying something I didn't know how to tell you. Something that changed everything for me. His heart skipped. What is it? He asked. Emily's eyes filled. Keep reading. A few weeks before I left, I found out I was pregnant. The words blurred. Ethan's breath left his lungs all at once. Pregnant, he whispered. Emily nodded, tears spilling now. I didn't know how to say it. I didn't know what it meant for us. I was terrified. His mind raced, memories rearranging themselves, moments suddenly making sense. The distance. The fear. The sudden departure. What happened? He asked. Emily took a shaky breath. I lost it, she said quietly. Before I could even tell you. The silence that followed wasn't loud. It was devastating. Ethan closed his eyes. All the grief he had carried suddenly had a shape. Not just the loss of her, but something else. Something he never even knew existed. I thought if I stayed, Emily continued, I would break completely. I needed to run. I'm not proud of it. Ethan folded the letter slowly. His hands rested in his lap, heavy. So you left me to deal with the aftermath alone, he said, without knowing any of this. Emily nodded. I thought I was protecting you. He let out a bitter laugh. That's what everyone says. She flinched. I'm here now, she whispered. Not to fix everything. Just to tell you the truth. You deserve that. Ethan leaned back, exhaustion washing over him. The anger he expected didn't come. Just sadness. Deep, aching sadness. You broke me, he said honestly. I know, she replied. But you also didn't mean to, he added. They sat there, two people bound by love, fear, and terrible timing. Outside, the night pressed against the windows, indifferent to the quiet reckoning happening inside. Finally, Ethan stood. I don't know what happens next, he said. But I know I can't carry unanswered questions anymore. Emily nodded. Neither can I. Linda returned quietly, watching them with careful eyes. The truth was finally out. But healing, that would take time. And as Ethan looked at the woman who had once been his entire future, he realized something painful and freeing all at once. Some people leave not because they don't love you, but because they don't know how to stay.